So good morning to all. Our lesson is all about transportation planning process. So as we start our lesson, let us know what transportation and planning are. Transportation is crucial, so planning is needed. So planning is defined as activity that examines actions which guide us toward the desired direction. We can also determine what possible conflicts, alternatives, and solutions must be applied to reach the specified goal. And dito na papasok yung process. So, transportation planning process helps describe the effects of a proposed transportation alternative and explains the benefit to traveler of a new transportation system and its impact to the community. So, ano bang fundamental purpose ng transportation? Ang fundamental purpose niya is to provide efficient access to various activities. Anong activities to? Ito yung pagkakaroon ng mobility. Therefore, ang general goal ng transportation planning process is to accommodate this need for mobility. The transportation planning process also studies and describes how a particular transportation system affects or impacts the community or how it benefits to the commuters. So it also involves the following: the elements of situation, the variety of factors and consideration. And bakit naman? Kasi we all know that not all problems have same root of causes and not all problems have one solution. It can vary over time. So, ang responsible dito ay yung highway and traffic engineers. Highway and traffic engineers is responsible for developing travel demand forecasts, conducting evaluation based on economic and non-economic factors, and identifying alternatives. Sa travel demand forecast, dito papasok yung pag-predict ng volume ng traffic, and identifying alternatives naman, dito papasok yung solution on how to ease that heavy traffic. Next, transportation planning process is helpful where it can assist the decision makers and others in the community to select a course of action for improving transportation services, meaning it can help the transportation planner or engineer on how to carry out a logical procedure or step-by-step procedure on how can we solve that problem. And planning may increase a recommended action, but it does not guarantee that the planned action will inevitably be implemented precisely. Bakit? Kasi sa case na to, dito papasok yung trial and error. Wherein kapag failed yung plan mo, edi hahanap tayo ng another recommendation na mag-fit doon. Next, these are the 7 steps planning process is a helpful guide for organizing the works. So, situation definition, problem definition, and etc. So, sa information, yung information na acquire mo sa first phase ay magkakaroon ng domino effect. Therefore, magkakaroon siya ng continuity effort na ng decision. So, ano nga ba ang situation definition? Ang situation definition ay first step in the planning process, wherein it involves all activities understand the situation. Bakit? Dito natin alamin yung investigation, information about the surrounding area, and its travel habits. Siyempre, kailangan din natin aralin yung previous reports na about sa location. So, in figure 11.1 na nakita nyo sa screen nyo ngayon is a new bridge is being considered. So, ano ba mga dapat natin makita dito? So, kailangan natin mag-investigate. Kailangan natin alamin yung present highway condition, measuring the travel patterns and traffic volumes, geological maps, and soil conditions. So, the following steps will be discussed by Carlo.
Yun, problem definition. Next. Problem definition is to describe the problem in terms of the objectives to be accomplished by the project and to translate those objectives into criteria that can be quantified. Next. What are these problems na pwede nating kaharapin kapag nandun tayo sa transportation planning process? First one is the unavailability of extensive amount of land use. Siyempre dito sa Metro Manila na alam naman natin na some part sa Metro Manila ay marami ring mga informal settlers. So, minsan, syempre, sa sobrang dami nila, padami ng padami, padami rin ng padami na pagtatayo nila ng bahay. At syempre, alam natin, dito sa Metro Manila, sobrang daming mga buildings, mga businesses, companies, yung mga lahat yan, mga bahay, lahat. So, minsan, nahihirapan din na magbuo ng mga bridges or mga highways at the same time, syempre, nahihirapan din mag-extend ng mga pag-construct ng mga ito. Pangalawa is socio-economic. Isang example dito is kapag may paggagawa ng mga bridges o mga daan o mga highways yan, syempre nakaka-apekto rin to sa tao. Like kapag pupunta ka na school, traffic ka, umahaba yung travel time mo. So yun, nagkakaroon na ng pagpasa-pasa ng mga problema sa bawat pangyayari sa daan. And syempre dito rin din papasok yung traffic congestion. Syempre habang sobrang tagal ng biyahe, mas lalo ding dumadami ang number of vehicles sa daan. Next. Objectives are statement of purpose such as to reduce traffic congestion. So isa rin sa mga objective is yung pag sa transportation planning process is yung to reduce traffic congestion. Syempre, to improve safety rin, isa rin yan, to maximize net highway user benefits and to reduce noise. For example, the objective is to reduce traffic congestion might use travel time as the measure of effectiveness. Next. Referring to the figure 11.1, an objective for the bridge might be reduce travel congestion on the other roads or to reduce travel time between certain areas. For example, ako, pabiyahe ako ng Marikina to TIP, yung pag-rush hour is 30 to 40 minutes. Doon din malalaman ng isang pag sa transportation planning process kung effective ba or kung magkakaroon ba ng pagkaroon ng smoothness sa biyahe para ma-reduce yung traffic congestion. So kung ako ang nagiging biyahe ko na lang is 20 to 30 minutes or 15 to 20 minutes, effective yung travel time na pwedeng gamitin. So the criterion used to measure how well these objectives are achieved is average delay or average travel time. Next. Search for solutions. Next. In this phase of the planning process, consideration is given to a variety of ideas, designs, locations, and system configuration that might provide solution to the problem. Siyempre, hindi rin mawawala yung pag-uusap-usap at pag-brainstorming. Ito nga, this is a brainstorming stage in which many options may be proposed for later testing and evaluation. Next. Among the options that might be used are different types of transportation technologies or vehicles, various systems or network arrangement, and methods of operation. Next. It also includes preliminary feasibility studies which might narrow the range of choices to those that appear most promising, and next. And some data gathering, field testing, and cost estimating may be necessary at this stage to determine the practicality and financial feasibility of the alternatives being proposed. So yun, thank you for listening. Ang next presenter is si Nilo Pakatang.
Okay, good morning classmates, good morning sir. I am Nilo B. Pakatang Jr. and I am going to report the topics about analysis of performance and evaluation of alternatives. So for the analysis of performance, the purpose of this performance analysis is to estimate how each of the proposed alternatives would perform under present and future conditions. Ito ay currently divided into three performance focuses, which is the cost, traffic flow, and impact. For the cost, this basically entails the total investment cost. Any kind of construction projects naman ay grounded and governed by money o budget allocated for it. Kaya naman, it is always the proposal with the lesser cost. Pero syempre, hindi compromised ang quality that is being prioritized. For specifics, under the total investment cost ay ang building or construction cost, which entails naman the material, manpower, and equipment costs. After that is the maintenance cost. High maintenance ba o low maintenance yung magiging project mo? Kasi in the long run, if malaki ang makakain ng maintenance cost, magre-reflect to a larger sum of annual cost, which is definitely bad para sa budget since limited nga ito. Another analysis consideration ay ang traffic flow. Ay sorry, yung slide pala. So next pa ulit. So ayan. Backward. So the purpose of constructing a transportation structure is to relieve the traffic on the road. Pinafocus ito ang average number of vehicles o pati na rin ng tao na gagamit sa constructed system, as well as the trip length, the travel time, and the vehicle occupancy, all averaged. Take that and determine which among the proposed alternatives can offer better flow of traffic. Next. And lastly is the impact. Due to the prevalence of the global warming and other environmental concerns, mas binibigyang pansin na ngayon sa industry ang environment. Nowadays, you can just build anything na only beneficial to the people. Kasi kailangan considered na rin ang mga benefits na may bibigay nito sa environment na nakapaligid rito. For transportation projects, specifically, all eyes are concerned lagi sa land required by the proposed project. Ang mga questions like, may available land ba para magawa ito? Or is it feasible para magawa in a certain period of time? Questions like that must be met and answered along the way. Visual effect is a given for this one as well. And syempre, since environment ang pinag-uusapan, what aspect can transportation affect the most? Syempre, pollution, di ba? Specifically, air and noise pollution, since yung smoke ng vehicles ay nakakontribute dito. Moreover, for the non-user effects, paano ito maapektuhan ang community within its area? That's the question. So, next. Now that we've tackled the analysis of performance, let's go with the evaluation of alternatives. First line in this is the benefits versus cost. Next. For the benefits, most likely, syempre yung mas maraming benefits, mas better. And for the cost, ganun din, lower cost, always better. Syempre, if among the proposed alternatives, meron kang makitang project na full package pagdating sa aspect na to, why would you settle for less, di ba? Syempre, yun yung kukunin mo kagad since makakapag-save ka ng pera while having more benefits on it. Next. Next to that is the profitability. From the word itself that is highlighted, profit. With the toll gates as an exemption, since yung toll gates ay kaya mag-generate ng profits directly dahil sa mga toll na nakokolektahan dito sa mga roads. It is important to note that not all transportation projects can generate profit directly. Kasi mostly dito ay contributing factors lang ang mga transportation infrastructure to efficiently cater and meet the demands of the mobility of both products and goods. To determine if a project is profitable or not, meron tayong two ideas na makakatulong dito, which is yung NPV or net present value, as well as the BCR or benefit cost ratio. Next. So for the NPV or net present value, this is basically just benefits minus costs. Yung sagot na makukuha natin sa equation na to is makakatulong sa pagdidikta kung maging profitable ba o hindi ang isang project. An NPV greater than 0, which is indicated below, would mean that the project is profitable. If it is equal to 0, the project will be on a break-even state, which is yung in the long run, hindi ka kikita, in the long run, hindi ka rin naman malulugi. So parang quits lang. So another one is that if the NPV is less than to 0, that means the project is a failure. Siyempre, because the project will lose money and it will lose its purpose. So next. As an example of it, let's take a look at this problem. For the facility expansion project, 1 million pesos would be needed, which is expected to generate a total of 2 million pesos over 5 years. Ngayon ang tanong, what is the NPV of the project? So, as seen as the solution, since the formula is simply difference from benefits and costs, 2 million minus 1 million is equal to 1 million. The answer that we got is greater than 1. So, okay, next po. Since it is greater than 1, therefore the project is deemed profitable. Next po. After that ngayon naman is the benefit cost ratio. Again, simply it is just the benefits over costs. Di-divide mo lang yun to get the ratio. For the BCR that is greater than 1, that means that the project is profitable. And the higher the BCR, the better. If the BCR is equal, break even ulit. BCR of less than 1, the project will cause the organization to lose money or simply to fail. Next po, for the example. So, as an example again, we are gonna consider a project for the expansion of facilities, particularly a road widening due to rising demands. The cost of the expansion work and equipment would be 1 million pesos. It is expected that an increase in revenue of 2 million pesos would be realized within the expansion. Ano ngayon ang BCR nitong project na to? So, going back to the formula, which is benefits over cost, i-divide lang natin itong 2 million pesos into 1 million pesos. And the answer for that will be 2. So, again, nakakuha tayo ng BCR na greater than 1. So, meaning profitable ulit ang project natin. Next na po. And lastly, for the cost effectiveness. After all the prior considerations sa mga naunang slides and discussions, ito na ngayon yung phase kung saan tayo titingin kung among the proposed alternatives, sino ba yung mas may hinohold na merit na pinakamaganda? Kung sino bang pinakamababa ang cost, kung sino may pinakamataas na benefits na may ibibigay sa isang company. And that's all. Now let's go to the next reporter, which is Chester Cruz.
Choice of project. Project selection is made after considering all the factors involved. For simpler projects, a single criterion such as cost might be used and the project with lowest cost would be chosen. A complex project have several criterion to be considered. Additionally, a transportation engineer could possibly be biased on choosing a project. Halimbawa, kakilala mo yung contractor, mas pipiliin mo siya kasi doon pumapasok yung pagiging bias ni engineer. However, if the engineer is professional and ethical, the decision would be based solely on appropriate info such as revenue cost, site location, and political influences. The information gathered in the earlier phases is used together with engineering judgment and political considerations to arrive at a final project. Next. Specification and construction. Once the transportation project has been selected, the project moves into a detailed phase in which each of the components of the facility is specified. Physical location, geometric dimensions, and structural configuration are to be considered by the transportation facility. Basically, for a bridge project, it would include the piers, foundation, and its superstructure, roadway width, and even traffic signals to be used in the project. Design plans are used by contractors for estimation and such. Then the bids are produced for the construction. If the bid from a contractor is satisfying for the client, the contractor would be considered as qualified for the work. Then the construction phase proceeds. That would be all for the basic elements of transportation planning. The next topic to be reported is the transportation planning and institutions.
So, good morning. My name is Roy Arya and I'm going to discuss transportation planning institution. So, pababa. Next. So, planning process is based on systematic approach. Therefore, it needs to provide an institutionalized and formalized planning structure para mas maging organized and well-designated yung planning stage ng transportation project. The planning process is not just confined on highway but can be applied to many other situations such as intercity high-speed rail feasibility, airport location, harbor development, and most especially yung urban transportation system, which is mostly ito yung dito tayo nag-focus. Next. So, a transportation planning process should be based and done on what we call 3C, which is continuing, comprehensive, and cooperative. When we say continuing, meaning the process should be revisited frequently and viewed as ongoing concern. Meaning dapat yung process tuloy-tuloy para mas makita yung basic and operation nung basic operation flow ng project. When we say comprehensive naman, in the context, all the transportation modes should be addressed or dapat na-define nito kung para kanino at para saan yung project na yun. So yung last is cooperative. When we say cooperative, the process indicates that the city and municipality in urbanized area should be work together. Next. So now let's proceed to transportation planning organization or committee na wherein sila yung nagre-represent ng various community interests and viewpoints dun sa transportation project. So pababa. So una na dyan yung policy committee, which is composed of elected or appointed official, which is yung example nito yung mayor or yung mga public director works, wherein sila yung nagre-represent ng governing bodies or agency tulad ng ITDP, which is Institute for Transportation Development Policy. So this committee makes the basic policy decision and acts as a board of directors. So pababa. So yung pangalawa yung technical committee, which is composed of engineering and planning staff, wherein from the word itself technical, ini-evaluates nito yung technical aspect, which is yung basic in operation flow nung project na pre-prepared nung consultant. So next. Yung pangatlo, yung Citizen Advisory Committee, which is composed of cross-section of community, wherein pag sinabing cross-section, ito yung ni-represent nito yung labor, business, interested, members of community interested group. So the committee function is to express community goals and objective, to suggest alternative, and to react to proposed alternative. Also, it serves as means to increase the communication to assure that the final project or plan will reflect to community interest. So yung 4 is Metropolitan Planning Organization or MPO. So MPO has authority and responsibility for transportation policy making in metropolitan planning areas. They are responsible for actively seeking participation during the planning process from the public and transportation authorities. Also, MPO ensure that the existing and future expenditure for transportation project and programs are based on 3C or on 3C process. So now let's proceed to the implementation of transportation planning recommendation that will be discussed by Charin Trinidad.
Okay, good morning. I'm Chari and I will talk about the implementation of transportation planning recommendations. This implementation includes the 4 relevant project development processes. Next, please. So, the project development processes are the transportation planning process, transportation programming process, preliminary engineering and right-of-way process, and lastly, the construction process. I will explain first the transportation planning process. Okay. This process entails the generation of plans for various types of transportation facilities and programs. Such studies may include a 20-year comprehensive plan created by a regional planning body. The creation of these plans typically includes some degree of public involvement, such as public hearings, citizen surveys, meetings with citizen committees. As you can see in the figure, this is an example of public involvement. It is also guided by federal requirements for state and metropolitan planning organization planning processes. Each MPO is required to develop a TIP, which stands for Transportation Improvement Program. List po ito ng upcoming transportation projects, covering a period of at least 4 years. Next, please. Transportation programming process. It is the act of reconciling recommended projects from the planning process with the amount of funds available over an expected period of time. And usually, inaabot po ito ng 2 to 6 years. And dito sa figure, it describes the transportation project programming and delivery process. Pero ang pinaka main point dito is about the funding process. Nagaya nga po ng sinabi ko kanina, ima-match yung mga recommended projects to the available funds. And the role of this programming is to assist in the budgeting process. Next. Next is, the third one is the preliminary engineering and right-of-way process. Yung preliminary engineering po is analysis and design work to produce construction plans, specifications, and cost estimates. So definitely, it occurs after a project has been selected. And yung right-of-way process naman is an act of acquiring land or easement to complete a project. Easement means a right to use someone else's land for a specified purpose. For example, yung owner, he or she grants easement for use of land for the project. And within this process, variations of alignment may be considered, and environmental studies may be conducted. So sa mga environmental studies po, yung magiging outcome may result in no change to the project or magiging basis nito para makapag-decide kung mag-implement ba ng mitigation measures, such as creation of wetlands or pwede ding modification to the project such as new alignment or termination of the project. And lastly, the construction process. Next. When the plans for the project are completed, the project is ready to be bid out for construction. It entails advertising the project, soliciting bids, and constructing the project. Or sa madali pong salita, from the word itself, construction, which means the process of building. Dito po yung mga plano na ginawa sa previous processes will be executed following the proper procedures and methods in construction. Kasali na din po dito yung construction inspection. So, those are the processes in project development. And may I call on Mr. Elia to discuss the next topic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So previously we talked about transportation planning process. So now, I'm Anthony Clarence M. Elia, and my presentation today will focus on generation of alternatives. Next. Okay, generation of alternatives means ito yung pagbibigay natin ng options or yung choices natin sa plan. So dito, ang goal natin is to identify and generate alternative transportation plan, not evaluate. Hindi pa natin siya i-finalize kasi nagbibigay na tayo ng choices, ng options na i-evaluate later kasi ibang phase pa siya ng planning. Okay, it is based on the travel effects of different land use plans and lifestyle scenarios. So, based din siya sa goals of planning. So, ano ba yung land use plans and lifestyle scenarios? Di ba pinag-usapan natin before na yung land use pwede siyang maging residential, commercial, recreational, di ba, transportation. So, based on this, given condition, doon natin ibabata yung magiging alternatives natin. Okay? Tapos yung goals of planning naman, magbibigay ako ng siguro dalawa. So, ang goals kasi ng planning, usually to design the streets and highways that are safe and efficient to move people and vehicles. Yun naman yung goal, di ba? With minimum or minimal environmental impacts. So, next is to identify and address the needs of minority and low-income populations in making transportation decisions. So, ang goal natin is mabigyan ng way yung public and more importantly, yung minorities natin or your low-income class natin kasi sila yung hindi naka-afford ng private vehicles na accessible para sa kanila. So, public transport is more inclined to serving the poor. Okay? Kasi yun yung sa equality and equity na pinag-usapan natin before kay sir. Okay? Next. Okay, this is an example of comprehensive urban area transportation planning process. So, very tedious siya, mahaba. Pero magpo-focus tayo sa baba. Dito. Develop and evaluate alternative transportation plans. So, the plan features, first, transportation service, second, community impacts, third, costs and benefits. So, pag pinag-usapan natin yung community impacts, hindi lang to yung mga tao. Kasama rin dito yung environment. Kasi, naapektuhan yung environment one way or another, di ba? So, dapat i-take into consideration mo siya. Next, cost and benefits. Napag-usapan na to before, dun tayo sa profitability na diniscuss kanina ng groupmate ko. And, ayun, yun yung benefits-cost ratio. Okay, sabi dito, key areas of community participation are included in this phase of planning. Next. Ito ay from different source lang, pero same lang naman siya. So, move on tayo dyan. Next. Ayan, community participation. Sabi daw, transportation planning should always be a two-way communication. Ano ba yung meaning ng two-way communication? Dapat may feedback mechanism tayo. Hindi lang tayo announce, di ba? So, dapat may feedback din or inputs from elected officials, advocates, and stakeholders, di ba? Kasi, sinasabi na ang transportation planning daw is the collaborative participation of relevant transportation-related agencies and organizations. So, dapat may input from stakeholders which are yung traveling public natin, government agencies, public and private businesses, di ba? Yung community groups. Yan. Para maging informed yung decisions ng planners natin or ng designers. Next. Ayan, gawagawa ko quotation. Part of being prepared is having options. By Elia 2021. Next. Available options. So, sabi natin, di ba, pagka nag-gogo tayo ng alternatives, may options ka, may choices ka. So, first is various technologies. Ano ba yung una, alamin mo natin ako ano yung goal. Kung ang goal natin, for example, is bubuo tayo ng rapid transit or transit line extension, so pwede ang technologies natin either bus or train. Sa network configurations naman, pwede siyang, ilan ba siyang lane? 1 ba siya? Or 2? Ilang branch ba siya? 1 or 2? Yung terminals ba? Ilan ba yung terminals natin, di ba? Vehicles. Pwede siyang singly driven buses or multi-car trains, di ba? Kung ilang bagon ba siya, di ba? Ilan ba yung i-include natin vehicles? Operating policies, yun yung operating hours natin. Ano oras ba siya mag-start? 5 p.m. ba? 6 p.m. or AM pala? 6 a.m. or 8 a.m. Di ba? Organizational arrangements, kung public ba siya or private. Okay, next. Ayan. Thank you, and now that we know about generation of alternatives, we will now move on to other phases in the planning process. So, Darwin.
So, good day everyone. I am Darwin Latasa and I am here to elaborate the urban transportation planning next. Yan, so urban transportation planning ito yung type ng transportation planning that is mostly in-incorporate sa, true to the name itself, sa urban areas. So, ano yung primarily concern niya? Ang ini-evaluate dito is yung evaluation ng existing transportation facilities. And then, after ma-evaluate yun, we will make some improvements that could cater the future needs of the said sector. So, kita nyo rin sa screen, no, na we have here the official scene of DPWH, Department of Public Works and Highways, because they are the department mandated for the planning, design, construction, and maintenance of infrastructure facilities. So, essentially, no, as an overview nitong urban transportation planning of what is included here, ang primarily concerned niya is yun nga, sa existing facilities and then the possible future improvements. Next. Yan, short-term projects. Ito yung para sa future, no. Short-term projects, basically ito yung mga projects na ang concern is to somehow improve, to add an additional feature sa existing facilities natin. Halimbawa niyan traffic lights, the signals, signs, signages. So they are coined as short-term projects kasi they are the one that can be easily installed, no? Short-term projects, so sabi nga dito 1 to 4 year period makukumpleto siya. Pero actually, no, hindi yan don't let yourself be tricked by this term kasi not necessarily 1 to 4 year period. So mamaya sa next project ma-elaborate ko siya further. Next. Yan, here. So, long-term projects. Contrary dun sa nauna, short-term. Ito namang long-term projects, ito yung projects na expected to be operated or to be constructed over a 20-year period. Again, this is not accurate, this is not an accurate time frame. I'll elaborate further later. So, halimbawa po nito is yung highways, installment ng rapid transit systems. Yun po yung mga halimbawa niya. So, paano ko nasabing hindi accurate ng 20-year period? Kasi, way back, mga 5 years ago, actually 3, when we were still living in Antipolo, so may road widening project po yung DPWH, no? So, around, mga siguro 16 kilometer road yun, ng national highway yung dinagdag nila. So hindi naman sila inabot ng 20-year period. Actually, mga lang, around 5-year period yan, nakatapos na nila. So, kaya nasabi ko hindi gaanong accurate itong 20-year period kasi baka old reference, old data rin yung pinagbasihan. So, yeah, that's the idea of long-term projects. Next. So here, inventory of existing travels and facilities. Next. So kung yung kanina ang concern ng long-term and short-term projects, ang basically ang ini-evaluate natin doon is yung for future improvements. Here naman sa inventory of existing travel and facilities, ang concern natin is to gather information regarding the present transportation concerns in the area. So ang usually sinasummarize natin doon or hinahanap natin is yung existing traffic condition, land uses, transportation facilities, road capacities, and economic activities. And sinasummarize po natin yung mga data na yan using transportation analysis zones. So what are TAZ? Essentially, they are basically a diagram that guides us in grouping regions that possess a certain characteristic po, certain demographics. Halimbawa ito. Yan. So, yung shown image dyan, they don't necessarily mean na geographical boundaries of each cities. Kaya kita nyo, may mga designation ng numbers. Those numbers actually signify specific characteristic na in-assign ng researchers. So, next. Yan, establishment of goals and objectives. Next. So basically, continuation lang to ng inventory of existing travel. Kasi after mo ma-assess what the current situation of the transportation facility, syempre, mapipinpoint mo what are the deficiencies. Ano yung mga possible problems na mag-a-arise if hindi siya mag-continue. So, what the establishment of goals and objectives really are ay to set goals and objectives na parang ipa-improve pa ng current transportation system natin on a specific sector. So that's all for the initial part of urban transportation planning. The following topics will be discussed by Mr. Arthur Galliano. Thank you.
So, yung na-assign sa akin is yung estimation of cost and travel demand. So, itong part ng urban transportation planning is nahati sa dalawa. Yung una is yung cost and travel demand, estimation of cost, and yung pangalawa is yung estimation ng travel demand. So, yung cost estimation is usually straightforward and hindi naman ganun ka-komplikado and easy to execute compared to the estimation of travel demand na mas komplikado kasi ginagamitan pa ng mathematical models and computer softwares. And yung dito sa estimation of travel demands, hindi lang naman present travel demand yung ina-estimate nito. Pati na rin yung sa future traffic in future, no? So next. So cost estimation is the process of determining the probable cost of the project. So dito pumapasok yung lahat ng gagastusin na associated dun sa project within its scope and according to its timeline. So dito pumapasok yung utilities, yung labors and materials and equipments, lahat ng gagastusin para doon sa estimation na yun pumapasok, no? So itong cost estimation usually nade-delay. Sabi nga dito, the project cost estimation may be delayed due to problems that are developing during the process. So, bakit siya nade-delay? Kasi una is hindi well-defined yung project, and yung pangalawa, dahil nga it will take years para ma-finish yung project, yung cost is nagbabago dahil sa inflation, nagiging out of date. So, yung mga transportation agencies, gumagamit sila ng unit cost. So, ano ba tong unit cost na to? Yung unit cost, ito yung price per area. So, halimbawa, 50 million per mile. Pero yung mile na yon, ito yung haba ng kalsada. So, nag-allocate sila ng unit cost para dun sa isang area na yun. So, ginogroup din to yung unit cost sa dalawa. So, it will be grouped into urban and rural. So, kasi mas malaki talaga ang cost estimation kapag urban kasi dito nakasentro yung opportunities kaya mas maraming sasakyan, no? And next. So, travel demand. This is about the movement of people or goods to a certain place as a part of economic system. The estimation of the travel demand on the area becomes the basis and the influence of the project. So, inflation. So, ang travel demand, ito yung number of trips na ginagawa ng isang tao para makapunta sa one place or another. So, ina-estimate ito para magkaroon ng basis, ma-predict ng pangangailangan ng mga commuters, yung gagamit ng kalsada para malaman kung ano yung needs nila. And also, it influences the proposed size of the project. Kasi kapag halimbawa, marami ang travel of demand, mas malaki ang proposed size ng isang project. So, kung ang proposal ay maliit or cannot accommodate yung travel demand, doon naman pumapasok ang alternative. So, next. So, project alternatives are evaluated and taken into consideration, making sure that it is for improvement of the project. So, every project naman, maraming options yan. So, hindi lang naman isa lang yung options or yung plans. So, palagi merong backup yan. So, kapag ine-evaluate na, kino-consider nila yung traveling public, yung agencies, and the non-traveling public para ma-benefit sila. No? Yung traveling public, ito yung mga users. Ito yung commuters natin. So, gusto nung traveling public is siyempre ma-improve yung speed, safety, and yung comfort sa paggamit ng kalsada. And yung sa agencies naman, para ma-lessen yung cost, and yung sa non-traveling public, ito yung mga tao sa paligid ng kalsada ng project. So, gusto nila, syempre, ma-preserve yung quality of life. Kung ano yung quality of life nila dati, dapat ganun pa rin or ma-improve pa kapag nandun na yung project. So, ginagawa itong evaluation of alternatives para ma-meet yung mga gusto na itong tatlo and without compromising the quality. So, that's all. This is the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening.